So I got Lloyd Evans from the John Cedars channel to come on recently. For those of you who don't know about him, he's an ex-Jehovah's Witness YouTuber just like me. He used to be an elder, and now he's an activist against the Watchtower Society. He's been doing this for a long time, and I can only imagine how many people he's pulled out over the years. We've been planning on doing something together for a while, and it finally happened. There's some choppiness with the audio near the middle, but I still think we got the point across. I hope you guys like the discussion. Let's get into it. Today I have Lloyd Evans from the John Cedars channel on. I appreciate you coming, Lloyd.
It's an honor to be with you. Big fan of your channel.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I'm a big fan of yours too, actually. I watch it every time you release something new. And I just saw you had the Pillowgate thing come out today. So I haven't watched it yet, but that is next on the list.
Well, you're in for a treat because Watchtower is the gift that keeps on giving at the moment when it comes to outrageous video material. So
I know you keep digging up these crazy videos from them. It is insane. Yeah. So anyway, I had a couple of questions for you. I figured we'd start out with some easy ones. I was wondering how you feel when Jehovah's Witnesses come to your house. Do you have any opinion on that?
They don't come to my house because everyone in my community knows, all the witnesses in my community know who I am, and then they know where I live. And furthermore, I'm kind of sharing a house with Jehovah's Witnesses because my wife's parents, who share the same building, are here. So I've never had that problem. I did have that issue once. Someone pranked me by filling in, they must have found out my address somehow, and they pranked me by filling in my address for a Bible study request. So I had these two confused elders at my doorstep. This wasn't long after I disassociated. I guess they must have thought I'd had a change of heart or something, and I had to.
So they knew you, I guess.
They knew. Oh yeah, one of them had been on my judicial committee, so I guess they were just doing their job. They thought, well, we have to take it seriously, so we'll call. So
that is really, really funny. Yeah. Up until probably a year ago, I also lived in the same area from which I was disfellowshipped. So it didn't happen too often, but every now and then I'd get somebody from my congregation coming in, knocking on my door. But now I live in one congregation's area over. So I'm just waiting for the opportunity for some Jehovah's Witnesses to come, and I can invite them in and have a cup of tea with them and try some street epistemology on them. I don't know if you've heard of that or not.
Oh, definitely. Well, I've done a bit of street epistemology myself on the Disneyland video, and it's great fun. I actually am really looking forward to one day moving back to the UK. I might even move to the US at some point, depending on where life takes me. But I'd like to move to an English-speaking country where there's a chance that I'm going to get called on by the JWs, and just see how long I can kind of drag it out before things get really awkward. I guess because obviously I have my massive bookshelves with Watchtower publications, and I guess I'd have to keep them away from the JWs as long as possible, because the minute they see them, it'd be a bit like 50 Shades of Grey, showing them into the pleasure room or something. It's like, okay, right. What am I looking at? But yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I had a couple of viewer questions for you, actually, one of which was, how much longer do you think the Jehovah's Witness organization will last? So I had a couple of thoughts on it too. Maybe you can weigh in on it, but they have the second generation teaching, and I've kind of done the math on that, and they have probably another 30 years before they have to recalculate that, I suspect. What do you think about it?
Well, here's the thing with religion. Religion's mortal. Religion can survive for as long as there are people around who are willing to believe it. And the perfect example in the case of JWs is the fact that we still have Bible students. There are still people who follow Charles Taze Russell, decades, more than 100 years now after his death. despite his failed predictions, despite his wacky beliefs about pyramids, there are still people who think he had something sensible to say about the Bible. If that's true of Charles Taze Russell, you can bet that there's going to be people who venerate the governing body in whatever form the organization takes decades from now. The question for me is whether there's still going to be a Watchtower Society around, because Watchtower is a legal entity. If it's capable of taking on debt, it's capable of going bankrupt. So it will be interesting to see what becomes of Watchtower over the next few years. I personally can't see too much longevity in the actual organization itself. But as far as the teachings are concerned, I've been thinking about this a bit more recently. And, you know, we talk about prophecy, we talk about 1914, and we talk about how it's just becoming ludicrous now, the way they're clinging on to these ideas. I actually am starting to think that they could dispense entirely with the eschatological elements of their beliefs and just rely purely on saying, well, we are God's one true religion because look at all of our works, look at the fact that we're preaching worldwide. I think that so few witnesses even understand the 1919 teaching and base their beliefs purely on, oh, but look at how loving our organization is and that kind of thing. I'm starting to think that they could just dispense with the whole prophetic thing entirely and just run on, well, just take it from us, we're God's one true organization.
Yeah, they've historically capitalized on that a lot. They always have an excuse for why things go the way they go. I know that I remember them talking about the whole 1975 thing. And well, my mom was telling me about this when I was little. I guess something like poisoning the well, right? That's what she was doing. She was saying, all these Jehovah's Witnesses believed it, but the society, they were loyal and they knew that wasn't going to happen and all this other stuff. So, after the 1975 stuff happened, they said, look, the greater number is cooling off. And it's just further evidence that we were correct. So there's always some excuse for it, right?
Anything can be evidence, yeah.
Yep. So I actually had another question here for you. I was wondering what your favorite or most controversial and hypocritical verse in the Bible is, or if you prefer, favorite or most controversial teaching of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh, well, the Bible is something else entirely. You'd have to go to Old Testament, wouldn't you? Although there's a lot of awful stuff in the... look, I just don't like anything where people die senselessly. I probably would just go Leviticus 20:13, where it's calling for gays to be killed just for who they love and how they're oriented. I suppose I just have to go for the shunning teaching. It's wreaking so much havoc in people's lives. That of all of the problems that Watchtower has and Jehovah's Witnesses, policies like child abuse and blood transfusions is the one that I think can positively impact on all the others. Because if you got rid of shunning, Jehovah's Witnesses an opportunity to vote with their feet. To get rid of shunning, that would have a positive effect on all of the other teachings, because all of a sudden the governing body would be accountable to their followers.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I suspect that's probably partly why they never will do away with it, or why it's so solid in their ideology, right? Because they know the second they get rid of it, the second they become just a little bit more relaxed, everybody's going to ditch them, right?
Sure, so, there's an enormous insecurity in the shunning policy.
Yeah, there definitely is. So, and actually, just a side note, you can see similar things, not just in the Jehovah's Witnesses, but in other religions, and even in political ideologies about isolating people from information or shunning family members or friends, things like that. So yeah, I had another question here for you. I was wondering how you felt about the Russia ban, because I get a lot of comments on my channel about the ban and how, they were right to ban them and it's a good thing. And generally, I feel like freedom of religion is one of the most important freedoms that we should value. Do you have any thoughts on it?
I've obviously made a video kind of detailing what my thoughts are. It's called The Day After the Ban. I actually made it just a few days before the ban came into effect, but I explore all the reasons why I think it's a terrible idea. I do think it's worth kind of acknowledging that they think it's a good idea. In many cases, it's probably because they've been through an enormous hurt and pain. I can sympathize with that. I really can. Ever an excuse for throwing people into jail cells just because of what's going on in their heads, suffer from a ban on any religion other than the leaders. And that's especially true in this case, where the governing body just gets to carry on as though nothing's happened. And ordinary Jehovah's Witnesses in Russia get mistreated and harassed, and we're already getting horrors coming through. Now that I'm no longer a Jehovah's Witness, I'm allowed to decide what my values are. And my values are roughly human rights. And we all have the right to freedom of conscience and freedom of religion. And I can't demand that right for myself while at the same time saying, yeah, but Jehovah's Witnesses don't get to have their rights. Absolutely need the right to believe utter nonsense. I just also have the right to criticize it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, even if it's a cult, even if it's a harmful cult, I would say my opinion is the only reason anybody would have to, complain about any of this is if they're violating human rights. And some may say Jehovah's Witnesses are violating human rights. Like I think it's Article 18 and 20 out of the UN Declaration of Human Rights. So my solution to that, of course, me, not being in politics at all, but I would say my solution would be to tax them until they don't exist anymore. Just tax them for every human rights violation until they are bankrupt, or until they stop, right?
That's why people do get angry, because nothing's being done. In the UK, it's not just that nothing's being done, they're actually rewarding Jehovah's Witnesses with charitable status. And when you think about it, if you do make a religion tax exempt, that too is a form of reward. At least stop rewarding them. And then when it comes to areas of abuse, such as covering up child abuse, absolutely need to prosecute, and you need to hold the leaders accountable for each of those individual areas of abuse, for those individual offences. But you don't just institute a blanket thing where you say it's against the law to believe this religion. You have to things far more methodically than that.
Yeah, I completely agree. But it's like, around the world, we can kind of see small steps being taken. What was it? The Australian Royal Commission was holding them on trial. I think there's some stuff going on in Canada. And I mean, there's stuff going on all over the world, but it's small steps. So sure. We're making progress.
We're just living in the wrong part of history, unfortunately. But yeah, I think it has to improve, doesn't it? Humanity has to move forward from this. And I can only hope that generations that'll look back and think, good grief, how did people in the 21st century ever have to put up with this?
Yep. So I had another question for you. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on what qualifies a religion as a cult, because I actually talked to Chris Shelton about this. He had some interesting thoughts on it, and I pretty well agree with just about everything he said about it. But do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a problematic word, cult, because immediately you're putting someone on the defensive if you're saying, well, I think you're in a cult. It's never a great way to have a conversation. But I think if you're dealing with things kind of calmly and objectively, the approach that I take, and I don't expect everyone to take this approach, maybe it's just me, I just think a cult is a group that follows either a leader or a group of leaders, either dead or alive. They orient themselves around the kind of teachings or commands or rules. And it's a group of that nature that does harm. That's my own kind of definition. If everything about it is wonderful, then there's no need to call it a cult. So by definition, it needs to be something that's harmful. By extension, I believe that all religions, to varying degrees as cults, are a religion, come and go as you like, where there's no kind of pressure, where they're not micromanaging you. It's just that they're teaching a religious doctrine. They're still doing some harm because, for example, if you have kids, you're then having to teach your kids this stuff that isn't true, and that's going to harm them because they're going to grow up believing things that aren't true. I would class them as like a soft cult. Call other kind of extremes such as Scientology and moving further into the extremes of fundamentalist Islam, I'd start saying, well, these are hard cults. But that's kind of my way of looking at it. My views might evolve in time, but that's where I am at the moment.
Yeah, I can pretty well agree with that myself. You know, I was just thinking about this. When I was trying to get baptized, I don't know how it works now, but when I got baptized, I think I was like 13 or somewhere in there. And this was probably in 2002, maybe. I was going to a study with one of the elders, and he was just the guy helping me get baptized, you know. And he was going through this book, and he explained to me why Jehovah's Witnesses are not considered a cult. So he read the dictionary definition, which is a group of people who venerate or worship a single person or something like that. And of course, cults, that's sure, that's the first dictionary definition, but it's always more nuanced than that. It's never that simple. So I had another question for you here. I was wondering if you could tell me how it feels to get used to having a beard now. What is it like to have a beard after having that band for so long?
Well, I kind of experimented with growing beards. I went on holiday for maybe 2 weeks. I'd always use that as an excuse to kind of just let my facial hair grow a bit. I'm not a very fast grower either. As a JW, I could get away with shaving every 2 days without it being noticeable. My beard is not kind of like a statement of rebellion or anything. It's just purely convenience. I work for myself. I'm my own boss. I work from home, and there's just no need for me to shave. The only time that what I do basically is I let my beard grow, and then if it gets to a ridiculous state where I'm starting to look like Jesus or Muhammad, take some clippers and cut it off, and then it grows again. It's just a purely cyclical thing, my beard. But it is just nice to have that freedom, which you don't have as a Jehovah's Witness. You find out about when you leave, bizarre jealousy towards Charles Taze Russell, because of course the religion's founder had a big bushy beard, and apparently Joseph Rutherford, who followed him, resented anyone who reminded him of his predecessor and made them cut off their beards. It's absolutely insane, and we're still living with the legacy of that.
Isn't that crazy? Like there's a lot of stuff in this religion that kind of comes from odd roots like that. Like Joseph Rutherford influenced so much of this. But actually, I swear I did not plan this, and we talked at one point, but I just happened to have your book here, and I think you talk about it in the book, don't you?
I talk about it there. Well done for having it within arm's reach.
Right,
I do.
That's right.
As a reference book, I obviously have it on my computer as a PDF, and I'm amazed at how often I'll actually refer to it, even though I've written it, because I put so much research into it, and every now and then I'll be preparing a video, touch on a certain point, and I'm thinking, I'm sure I've done this in my book, but you know, I'm going to include it in my video, and I actually go to my book. So it's weird to own book as a reference.
Can't remember everything, right? So
sure.
Well, I was actually just I have a little collection of my own here. It doesn't rival yours by any stretch, but I have the original Revelation book. This is the one I studied when I was little.
Any good collection needs to have the Revelation Climax book, so that's a good one.
Yes. Yeah. I also have the Silver Sword. This is the brand new one. I don't have an old one, but Got that. And then I've got the Life. How Did It Get Here? By Evolution or by
Diamond.
Creation? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my
one
little
that
collection.
got sent to Richard Dawkins by lots of people, prompting him to write 3 or 4 pages about it in The God Delusion.
Yep. I actually, years after I got out, I ended up reading that book and heard that. And I was like, I cannot believe this. This is so funny.
But you can just imagine Jehovah's Witnesses thinking, that Richard Dawkins, he doesn't know what I know. I'm going to send him the creation book. That'll sort him out.
I actually have another question for you. I was wondering how long it took you to get past the strange feeling that you should be studying or going to a meeting or going in service, because I know when I was Jehovah's Witness, basically all of my time was taken up with underlining and preparing for talks or reading the Bible or reading some other book. So how long do you think it took you to get used to that?
I think maybe just first couple of meetings when you're missing it and you know you're missing it because you're inactive. Yeah, that it feels weird. Very quickly get used to it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the problem is that my mother keeps kind of trying to subvert her, I guess you could say. She's trying to bring her in, and for some stupid reason, I haven't disconnected contact between my daughter and my mother. I still let my mother talk to her. And of course, my mother lies and says, I will not talk about Jehovah to your daughter, I promise. And of course, she talks to her about it. You know, why would I expect any difference? Yeah.
Theocratic warfare.
That's exactly right. That's what it is. It's theocratic warfare. So I remember when I was younger, I used to just pray when something bad or some weird thing was happening in my life. I would just kind of automatically go into prayer mode, right? I'd just say, Dear Jehovah, please help me, blah, 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 you know, something like that. And even to this day, I still catch myself doing that a little bit. Like I'll hear myself in my mind say, Dear Jehovah, blah, blah, blah. Do you ever catch yourself like inadvertently praying like that? Or is that just me?
That's just you.
Oh, shoot.
I know. I can't think of ever doing that. And believe me, I've had some, you know, this life always throws curveballs at you. And there's going to be times when, you know, things just aren't going your way. And you maybe even move to tears at some point. But even at my darkest moments, I think once I shared the belief in God, and by the way, when I was, even after I'd stopped attending meetings for a while, I was still praying when I'd go out for, and embarrassing my wife, we'd go to the restaurant and I'd be praying for our meal. I was kind of as to whether God existed or not. I still thought, well, just in case he does exist, I need to show appreciation. I kind of properly got rid of my belief. That was it. It was gone. And no, I never feel any kind of motivation, even at my darkest moments, to try and reach out.
Yeah, that's Pascal's wager at its strongest, I guess, isn't it? Where you know, just in case, it might be the case that Jehovah's real. But I don't believe it. Of course, there's nothing in me that suspects that Jehovah may be real. It's just kind of
it's a reflex.
Yeah, it's a reflex. That's what it is. But anyway, I just wanted to get you on here for a couple of minutes. I appreciate you coming on again. Like, I know you're short on time and everything, so I just wanted to thank you again. But I think that's about all I had to say. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about? I suggest my viewers should take a look at your YouTube channel. It's the John Cedars channel. There's an interesting story behind why it's John Cedars and not the Lloyd Evans channel. So go check it out to find out what that is. And I suggest you guys take a look at his book. It is a comprehensive list of every Jehovah's Witness subject you would ever want to know about. Did I miss anything?
Thank you for the thorough plug of my book. That's fantastic. No, it's been a pleasure. And all I can say is keep up the great work. I'm obviously one of your subscribers, and it's always a thrill to see a new video go up. So the more channels like this that are just kind of putting common sense out in a world that is gravely deprived of common sense. So keep up the great work.
Thanks. I appreciate that. You too. We'll talk to you again soon. You guys should subscribe to the John Cedars channel. Follow us on social media and follow me on Discord. Links are in the description. Thanks for watching, guys.